So, welcome to our pilot test of the Venn dialogue. My name's Liam. I'm on the experience design team. Today I'll be moderating a conversation between
Leo, creative, digital creative.
And Michelle Matthews, experience design.
And so this program came out of the fact that we saw an opportunity to increase the amount of empathy we had in between teams. And so we thought by engaging in a conversation out in public in Team 1, we'd be able to better understand where the other person's coming from in our project. So today we want to have a conversation, talk about where XD and creative work in tandem with each other, and what parts might kind of butt up against each other. So without further ado, we are going to start the question round. So, we're going to ask you guys something that no one knows about Michelle that Leo will answer.
That's right.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So what is something that no one knows about Michelle, Leo?
That on the weekends she works as a hummingbird milk inspector. True story.
Sticking to it.
Something no one knows about Leo is that he holds the world record for world's longest nap.
That's true.
Well, he lost 2005 to 2012, I think. Napping.
I had to get back into it with training. Yeah.
Perfect. All right, now we're going to get into the kind of the nitty-gritty. Leo, I want you to explain what it is that Michelle does day to day.
That's a good question. I'm glad you asked that.
Thanks.
So I think Michelle, day to day as UX, I think that she is looking at trends across digital experiences. I think she's constantly looking at how a user goes through a website, depending on the project, of course, but and tries to maximize the way a user takes in the information on a website, whatever we're working on.
What does that generally look like to you?
Having conversations with the team, I'd say, with the UX team and designers, and doing a lot of sketching, testing different types of layouts. I guess also doing testing with people who are not on the project itself to see how they navigate these wireframes or sketches or whatever to see what might work best. Yeah.
Excellent, thank you. And Michelle, what do you think Leo does day to day?
I think that Leo probably does a few things. One is hopefully working with our team to make experiences look really great as well. And I'm sure that Leo's also hopefully thinking about flows and things like that in relation to some of the design choices that he's making. I also think Leo probably does a lot of concepting, a lot of coming up with bigger ideas and bigger visions for some of the projects we work on as well.
Perfect, thank you.
So.
All right, next question. What do you think the most misunderstood aspect of your own job is?
I've heard talks around the office that I make things look pretty and that it's an easy job, which it's not. Actually, I think good design requires obviously experience, but knowing the trends in design and what's happening with storytelling and interactions, and having like an affinity for like what direction you think things are going, at least the good representations of design out there, and also keeping your finger on the pulse of like not only what the style guide is for a particular client, but where you want to take them and where you think that they might be heading. so that you can maximize like the, the effect of layouts and designs and what you do with what's given to you.
Thank you. How about you, Michelle?
I think I don't want to sound like I have a chip on my shoulder, but like I've been working in UX a while, and I think that when I think about UX, I think about an iceberg. It's something that lots of books touch on, but I think the part that people see is like the very tip, and there is a whole lot that we do that people don't see and people don't understand it and don't know that we do, which is a lot of thinking. And I'm hoping, especially here at Team 1, now that we have this usability lab going, that people can start to see that thinking a little bit more. But yeah, I think sometimes if people are new to digital or just not that familiar with what we do, they think we make wireframes, and that's kind of what we do. But I think wireframes is maybe like 10% of what we do. It's like usually our biggest output, but really just the result of a lot of other stuff.
Thank you. We'll start with Michelle.
Oh no, switch it up.
What is the ideal way to collaborate with someone in creative?
So I like to collaborate pretty early on, especially Leo and I have worked on stuff before together, and I especially like to bring in art directors to kind of help concept things. I think that as much as like I am familiar with trends, I think art directors have like a little bit, not more imagination than I do, but they bring in a different element. And so ideally, and it doesn't always work in agencies this way, unfortunately, like we can collaborate from the get-go. I can keep them in the loop of all that thinking that's happening ahead of time, so that they're thinking in that way too, thinking about the user, thinking about that end result. And then once it's even time to wireframe, like iteratively working and collaborating. And I bring an early version over to Leo and say, hey, what do you think, to get that sort of input, because I really feel like if you can do it that way and it feels like a thing we're doing together, you can avoid that tension of like, now it's my turn and I'm gonna do it my way. Because if you're doing it together, then you're doing it together and you both have like ownership of it.
So what I'm hearing is more holistic.
Ideally, totally. Unfortunately, like that's really hard to do, especially in an agency, because while I'm doing my stuff, Leo probably also has other stuff he's doing, and finding that time. We do tend to do things really waterfall, and it's hard. And some people aren't familiar with working that way and might be uncomfortable working that way. I feel like, especially if you haven't worked that way, it can feel like a challenge. So, but that's ideal. That's the ideal way of doing it.
What do you think about that, Leo? Is there anything that you disagree with, that you
I do appreciate that approach to the process, and it works really well. So I'm glad that you do it, and other people in this team. So I think that works best. So what's the ideal way to collaborate with your counterpart? So yeah, from the very start, I think it's important to at least let people on the team see what you're thinking. That way, whether I give you input or not, I'm already thinking about how something will start to look or move or function, which is a great thing. I think we, both departments, or think about things from different angles sometimes. And so you never know when the better idea will come from UX or from design. So it's great to be working in tandem together. And yeah, sometimes waterfall works, but I think I tend to really prefer starting from the beginning with both teams together.
Mm-hmm. I think it becomes like a shared vision rather than one person's vision, because we all have egos, like we all do.
Every person.
And it's hard to put that aside.
Yep. It's easy to take ownership and to put more of yourself into a project if you are included from the start.
Where does trust come into play here? Do you feel like you guys need to work for trust to start off at the very beginning, or do you feel like it's a natural understanding?
I usually try not to trust from the very beginning. I don't trust anyone,
Trust no one.
including the cameraman. No, I'm kidding. Trust is important. Yeah, it's very important.
Not trusting can make really weird dynamics. The thing is like we all work really hard on our parts, and to be worried about it being undermined or, even phrasing it that way feels weird, but to not, I guess everyone wants to feel included because we put so much, time, thought, heart into our work, that you want to trust that everyone on your team has the best interest, and everyone does. I've never worked on something where that wasn't the case. It's just that, again, we all have your egos, and tension can get high sometimes, and so in that case, it really is. I think sometimes, and it's not just Team One. It's everywhere I've worked in advertising. Sometimes I think people forget that we are a team. That we're all working together, and it's not UX working against strategy, working against creative, working. It's we're all working for the client. We're all there for the same output. And so that trust is pretty vital, for sure.
Yeah, and I guess you hit a point there. With client, we definitely do need the client's trust. So when we work as a team, I think that actually is seen by the client and makes the product better, for sure.
It's like leading by example.
Yeah.
All right, from there we'll go to our next question.
Sure, yeah.
What do you think your biggest hurdle is for having that team collaboration?
Time.
Is it time?
A lot of the time it's time.
Because the proximity of where teams sit, does that help or is that a difference?
You want to answer that?
I don't. In my opinion, proximity doesn't matter too much for most of the process. At the beginning, I think it's really important. I do like it when QX has meetings and I can hear, so I'm not necessarily in the meeting, but I'm aware of what's happening, developments, so that's great. That's really important, actually. But at some point, I don't think proximity is that important. But yeah, the issue could be time, but it's something that it's almost like, what do you do about that? Because that's always going to be a factor, So.
In regards to proximity, the one nice thing about being in close proximity with a team is that I think it builds camaraderie. Just seeing people, talking to people, asking them how their day was. That sometimes if you're, working remotely with someone or they're in another part of the building, you don't get that. And so I think that's where proximity can help a lot. And I have lots of I know when I worked on really crazy projects and everyone's in a war room together, it can be awful but really fun, when you're all hustling together, eating pizza together, getting your work done together. It really kind of does build up. That close proximity in that moment does build up, I think, a strong foundation between people.
I'll take it back because I just thought of a couple instances where the UX part of the project is over, or at least seemingly over, and I'm already far along, and I do just turn around and say, hey, Leon, can you give me your opinion on this? So I guess that does really help. If he wasn't there, I'd probably not walk over to find where you are, or maybe I would. I don't know. I just know it is a barrier to be farther away, so that does help for sure. Yeah.
So, the gossip. Oh, we're
Wait,
gonna go back.
let's go back.
You can. Where can these collaborations go wrong in your experience? And how have they gone wrong? No names. Better to talk about previous agencies.
I'm gonna let Leo go
It's
first.
interesting that you asked this, Leon. I'm just kidding. Where could they go wrong?
I mean, how is this?
Oh, okay.
phrased?
This is a fast.
Not in collaboration with Baham, not,
Between UX and creative
yeah,
specifically.
like
This
where
is
it's
easy.
not working,
Yeah.
it's not successful.
Yeah.
Where people are trying to do their jobs, but we're not able to get to the goal.
Yep.
At least in a graceful way.
One of the easiest answers, like the ones that just come out right away, is when UX or wireframes look more like design. And not, I mean, I'm not one to shout out when I see that kind of thing,
Sure.
but I do know it's one of those things that designers tend to get bothered by sometimes, because then it leaves less margin for creativity. At least some of them feel that way. I never ever take wireframes as this is law, you know. I think of it as a guide, and unless, of course, the notes will say that there's a reason why this is here. But that's the biggest, I'd say.
Yeah, and I think what's happening in that situation is mostly that collaboration isn't happening. It sounds like collaboration, but it's not. Because if it was true collaboration, like, you would be seeing these wires and you could give that feedback. You know, the idea that wireframes aren't law is like true, but not at the same time, in the
Yeah.
sense that, like, you should be able to, like, turn around to someone and say, hey, what about the placement of this? You know, can this be moved?
So in the same fashion that Leo was saying, further in the process, he'll call in somebody from UX to say, what do you think about this? It's on the opposite side of UX, early in the process, saying, Leo, what do you think about this?
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
bringing each other into your roles a little bit.
Yep. Another way this could go wrong is, do you want to say something?
It just sounded like there's a lot of gray area, right? And
Yeah.
I'm wondering if there's opportunity for UX or creative to better define where there's latitude in certain components of wireframe and how that might be helpful or how it might be applicable or not.
Sure.
So,
Yeah.
do you have an opinion on that?
Not at the moment. Not at the moment. Because I think you guys are doing a great job right now, honestly. What another issue I wanted to bring up before I forgot is having too many cooks in the kitchen, even like just from UX, because I know I've been in other projects where that might not be a problem, but in some cases it is, because if you're doing a really heavy site, there can be different little tweaks in navigation on the same website, just because there's multiple UX folks. Quick turnarounds, obviously, that's always a case. But, you know, having multiple people who aren't checking in often, or at least that can happen. You know, you can have like a disjointed experience because one form of navigation on one page is different from another. It hasn't happened lately, but I know that can happen.
Yeah, and
For sure.
I think, like, you know, collaboration is awesome, but you still kind of need someone who is gonna, like, lead the collaboration. And sometimes collaboration happens and you don't have that. And again, when you have too many cooks in the kitchen, everyone has an idea. What idea, you know? And that starts to bring up egos again. Like, I want my idea. I want to see, you know. So.
So is ego primarily a negative thing for you in this process?
It doesn't have to be.
Okay.
Like, but I think that we have to. Everyone, you know, we all want to see our work on the page. Ultimately, we all want to see that, and I think it's good to adjust how you see yourself in it. Like, if it's a group effort, like, you can still see yourself in it, even if it's like not like verbatim the exact concept, exact wire you did. So with your little signature on the bottom, you know, like, you can still like you like I think everybody kind of has to. I feel like when I was really early on in my career, I had way more ego than I do now, where I was just like
Yeah, same here.
I wanted to take credit for everything. I wanted, I know that like, because it feels good, but I think it feels even, I mean, in my case, in my experience, it feels better when it's a better product that you worked with a solid team on.
Yeah.
And it may not look exactly like how you pictured, but sometimes it's better.
And being aware that the client is a part of your collaboration is important, of course. So there are challenges there in the collaboration because they could have certain requirements or at least wants that they haven't expressed yet, and either that or they don't know what they want until they see it. But I think the friction can happen when they haven't disclosed all of their all of their wants. So that can be a challenge. It can, yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's also a lot about goal setting. Sometimes I think that's a step that is easy to skip when you're like on a tight deadline, and you can lose sight of what are the goals of the project. What are we actually trying to accomplish? And I think especially as a UX practitioner, like I'm focused on very specific user goals, and sometimes user goals conflict with business goals, and it's sometimes hard to collaborate to make those meet, because and that's a huge thing of what I do is that's my job, is to be in there and to advocate for that, which sometimes goes against what everyone else in the room is doing. So that can be a challenge, I think, especially for UX.
Thank you, guys. Go to the next question. So this is something we've talked about a little bit on our own, but what comes first for you in your process, data or vision?
Vision is what I would say, but that kind of blankets everything, in my opinion. And Michelle and I have talked about this before. Do you want to talk about data or your opinion?
Well, it's like the chicken or the egg in a lot of ways, because data can inspire a vision as well, I think. I think a piece of data is often what the client needs or what the user needs. Like that to me is a type of data, and that should inspire the vision. And then you should back up the vision with more data. And if you can't do that, then you need a new vision, I think.
Unless the data doesn't work or it doesn't align with what the client is imagining,
Which do you see that often?
It happens sometimes, and I hear the pains from more strategy than from our departments. Conflicts between client goals and what the data actually says, or the studies, the research.
Because that has to be good data too.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was gonna say good data can actually really direct or inform how design will be inspired. Although designers, I'm sure, like to claim that they inspire themselves, they create their own inspiration. But in my case, that's true.
I like to make I like to make my own data, so it works.
The lightning round. So the way it's going to work, we're just going to put up a concept, and you guys are going to very quickly just say who it belongs to, UX or creative.
Or not so much who it belongs to, but what we do.
What we do in it.
Yeah.
All right. I mean, beyond that, because it belongs to everybody. But
So,
Leo, navigation.
Sounds good. I'm ready. Navigation. UX.
Just UX?
Or what do I do in it? What do I do in it? Is
Yeah,
that
what do
I
you
said?
do in it? You have
So
to touch
navigation. I would say that most of the time I tend to take UX's lead with navigation, but I do like to share sites that do it well, something that's related to like what we're aiming to do. So I do like to share the inspirations that I find online.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think what UX contributes to navigation is kind of setting up the backbone of the navigation, looking into like sorting the content, looking at the relationships of the content, creating a taxonomy that ends up just looking like a bar on the top of the screen sometimes, or is just the stuff in the hamburger menu. But there's a lot of thought and work that goes behind that, and I think an art director often has contributed clever ways of showing it, or and how it looks in a lot of ways. Not only that, but
Which potentially increases the usability for the user.
Yeah,
Increases
hopefully.
the experience, makes it more positive.
That's true. Do you want to sit on this side?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay.
Layout. It's kind of tricky. We touched on this a little bit earlier.
Yeah.
Shall we again?
I'll start with this layout. I mean, I think the primary thing that a UX designer should be looking at is hierarchy of the layout, and directing the user to where you want them to go on the layout. Because sometimes there's other things happening, but making sure that like there's a clear path, making sure that there's the right CTA and the right CTA language or the right content, and that it's readable, it's in the right spot.
Layout. So I guess the details are what are important to us in layout. So I think I don't want to like overlap with another question in the future, but styling of the layout, distance, the spacing between characters, like the leading and the padding, to have the content have breathable space around it. Sometimes the wires don't reflect the right amount of space for something so that it looks pleasant and is not jarring. I guess that's important.
So layout's very much about the details for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great.
Yep.
Color.
Yeah, color's important. I agree. I mean, for sure, it's informed by the style. But as far as photos go, treatment for photos being all unified, or the nature of the photos as well, or how the photos are grouped in different sections. Color. Color also can determine how something's related to other items in its section. So between sections, maybe there are different colors, although that's not done too much now. What else? Yeah.
I mean, I know when I'm looking at color, like, I'm not really looking at it like, do these colors look nice together, as much as I'm like, okay, what does this color mean? Like, if it's a color of a CTA, or if is this legible with this color? I'm looking more at, like, the usability and the functionality of the color. Like, what is the color doing?
But significantly less preference to the color decision outside of usability.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess some UX designers may have more to say about color, but
Yeah, I
don't.
I think you're right.
Say
I mean,
about
I
it.
think you're right. The color it shouldn't be in your face. I think it should be there to guide the user. It should be used with intent. It should indicate if something's important, or establish a look and feel, maybe elevate the brand. So using color with intent really takes the product pretty far. Some people don't notice it, and that's probably a good thing. So.
Images.
I can start.
Okay.
So for me, images, it's similar to color in the sense that like I don't care as much what the image is of as long as it's communicating like, you know, what the page is doing and it's not distracting from content, it's not pulling away from a CTA, it's not, so I'm looking, that's when I look at images, that's what I'm looking at. I trust, you know, I trust creative to pick the right images and to, you know, pick beautiful images. All I care about is if there's text over it, can you read it? Is it distracting from a CTA? Things like that. And also, a big, huge thing is something I hope all of us can be more cognizant of is load times, performance. Images can get real heavy, and that's more of a dev thing. Of how can we treat this image so it doesn't, you know, bog down our site and users run away because it doesn't load.
So it seems lately that, well, it is obvious websites are very, they put the focus on content, meaning the design isn't so stylized or artistic. So images do sell. It tends to be like at the forefront now. I think there's a lot of sites that are like full screen imagery or video. I think images really do sell a product, and it does sell concepts. Images also are highly controlled depending on projects. So you know what we put in a layout to sell it might not be what ends up being the actual image. That's usually that's like 90% of the time. But images also indicate, I don't know, like with a car company, for example, like if the hero space is more like a gallery style of a car or like a 3D rendering of the car, and the rest of the images further down the page are more lifestyle with humanity. That kind of tells you it's a different section. Images are really important. They come with a lot of baggage when not used correctly, or you know. So, yeah.
Yeah, they tell a story, literally.
They really do.
Yeah. And interactions.
Speaking of telling a story.
Yeah. I think of all the things that we discussed, interaction is the one that needs the most collaboration because there's so much happening with interaction. It is about the experience. It's about, I mean, this is also an opportunity for devs to be involved.
Yeah, interaction. I think I can't talk about it without mentioning prototyping, because that's, unless you know how it works, then you won't know if it's the right interaction. So that's very important. Interaction can make a form more easier to get through. It can guide a user to know where they came from, I guess. If you transition from one page to another, or like something expands, if it expands instead of pops up, then the user might get less confused, like how did I get here? How do I go back? So interactions they're very important in helping the user stay focused and getting the information as seamlessly as possible.
Yeah, and it's oftentimes like you can have content appear in the same order, and it's just how you make it feel changes everything. Like you said, the difference between like an accordion and a pop-up, like a modal can make people feel like, why was I taken away from where I was? When really they are where they are. They just have to, it's the same amount of clicks and interactions to them get back to where they were, but it just feels different. And it's all about how it feels. So I think you're right with prototyping. That helps you understand better how it's going to feel.
Yeah.
Thank you guys.
Cool.
All right. And to leave on a nice note, you guys have to compliment each other.
Oh,
what?
no.
I know. Oh.
That's the wrench. I'm just kidding.
What does the other person do that you cannot do? Something that you admire.
You have to really think hard about that, Leo, don't you?
What do you do that I can't do? And I had an answer for you earlier. Yeah.
Yeah, and you
Let's start
forgot
with
it.
Michelle.
Thanks.
I did.
I think Leo is able to he's able to really make complicated things feel really simple with his design. And I think I've seen you're really good at telling a story with your design. And I think, I think that's really great.
I think Michelle in UX tends to see things from a higher level, which is great. They are able to back up and see the vision. I think more often than maybe design does, which is a great thing. It keeps us on track and I guess in check. Always being aware of the entire system, how the entire system works. That's a great thing. It takes a little weight off of design when UX is thinking about the whole picture. Of course, we do think about the whole picture, but not all the time. There are many times where we're just deep into trying to create a visual system that works well, that can blanket this entire experience. So
It's really nice.
yeah.
Thank you so much, you guys. At this point, we're going to open it up to audience participation. This
Let's
gentleman.
talk a little bit about your backgrounds and what led you into your discipline.
Oh, yeah.
And how that might be a little bit different, or what people might gravitate to.
Yeah. I went to school for graphic design, and that school, University of Florida, taught us formal elements of design and history of typography. We had to teach ourselves the technical aspects, and also, we weren't required to take like web dev or animation, but I did it anyways. I took Flash and studied Flash, and so I kind of taught myself how to animate. Moved from Florida to New York, and started working doing Flash animation. Sounds like a long time ago, but it's actually just a few years ago. And so, and I even dev'd. I actually did a lot of development. And then I guess as the years went by, working with teams and being able to delegate to small groups, it became more like meeting with clients and being a part of creating the vision for the project from the start. So it's pretty exciting. I'm trying to get back into, because I think I've been away from actually touching like code and knowing how things are built, that I'm getting back into it, and I have a really high appreciation for UX. I mean, it's kind of obvious. The last few years, the importance of UX is, it's been elevated, and so my interest in it has increased as well. So I'm always studying layout. I don't know. I come from an artistic background. My dad's an architect. I do handy stuff all the time. I make paper mache masks. I'm always on Pinterest. I love furniture design, like Danish modern. So I think I try to reflect that in my design, like cleanliness and focus on color, like limiting color. Animation is something that I'd love to put more focus on, like interaction animation, micro interactions. I think that comes from me animating, doing Flash, and now we're hitting another like golden era, I think, of animation interaction with CSS animations. Now it seems like the Flash era is coming back in a new way. You're seeing websites that are similar to the way they were animating, like in the late or early thousands, 2000s. So it's interesting to see that happening, and I want to be like part of the good example of what should be done with that kind of stuff.
Cool. I do not have any formal training in design. I actually, so originally I was worked as a journalist for a little while. Then I went to grad school for social work, and I worked for some time as a therapist. And how I initially first discovered UX and how the process of it was I was a client. I was working at Medicare Rights Center as in their client services department. We were redoing the website medicareinteractive.org, which is basically a site for people to research Medicare issues. And we had a pro bono agency come in, and they were helping us. And that's where I saw my first wireframe. Looking back, it was definitely balsamic because it was Comic Sans. And I was like, why is this in Comic Sans? I was that person who was like, I don't want Comic Sans on our website because I didn't know. And so that was a really fun project. And then I needed a break from social work, had an opportunity to do some copywriting, which turned into writing business rules, which turned into doing this as a career. And I think it's actually been very seamless for me. I taught myself to code when I was really young. I was like 11, making Hanson fan sites. That was my first website I made. And there was a little bit of time in high school where I got paid to do it a couple of times. But like a lot of girls, I was just like, all right, I'm going to go do other things. This is something boys do, which was unfortunate. And so it kind of brought that part of me back. That was always really, I moved around a lot. I was an internet kid. I had the internet before anyone else. I knew AOL. And so I've always loved the internet. And to be able to like kind of take that and marry it with the part of me that was a therapist and liked thinking, I like getting into people's heads and knowing how they work and how they think, and it was very natural for me to get into this field. And I also love the UX specifically because you can be a therapist or like, I don't know, architect or like whatever your background is, and you can find a place in the field. So yeah, that's how I got here.
Excellent, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Well, thank you guys so much.
Thank
for
you.
the first dialogues.
Tell you what, this went so well. I'm gonna give everyone food. You all can have sandwiches,
If
salads,
you have not eaten, feel
even
free.
drinks.
There are sandwiches right over here.